which you can't see.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that I wasn't on for most of the presentation, I'm now going to write on the blackboard so you can't see what I'm doing either. But that's fine. Whatever. We have better recorded presentations in this thing. So there's a couple, when you're making these entries in the blockchain, the end result is that you get a URL. So maybe I would have a URL like Nerd Summit. Now, the way that these URLs work is you can have permanent URLs that are yours the moment that you publish. Those URLs are going to have some kind of hash after them. There is also resolution of just URLs like this. And this is done by basically each coin in the system basically is equivalent to 1 vote. And so users who have credits can vote that this is the canonical entry, this is the entry that Nerd Summit should resolve to, or Spider-Man should resolve to, or any number of other things. So there's a bunch of URLs that have hashes or that have other differentiators, but then these short, which we'll call these vanity names sometimes, are controlled by the most votes. So why care about all this? Well, one, we've solved a number of the problems that exist with BitTorrent. Three of the biggest ones there are basically the first 3 bullets. So BitTorrent has no decentralized catalog. So while BitTorrent is a decentralized technology that's tough to censor, it has no discovery functionality. BitTorrent is basically full of piracy or full of infringing content. And we think we have improved on that situation in terms of the way that we've designed the discovery features and designed the way the library works. We also think we've fixed the incentives in general with BitTorrent. It's actually surprising that BitTorrent works as well as it does because it basically relies on people being nice. This offers some economic incentives as well. Although you can be nice, and we support people being nice. We just think it's nice.
It depends on people forgetting to close their clients.
That's called being nice. So another really cool thing that we're doing is we're monetizing a lay resource. So there's all this bandwidth, all this disk space across billions of computers in the world that basically goes unused. And LBRY allows the monetization of that. By running a LBRY client, you can earn a little bit of a return by making that disk space and bandwidth available. For the actual users of the system, publishers and consumers, it's also a big win. Publishers have more control over the ability to update and push their content out. It's basically a permissionless system. It's more trustful in the sense that we can't change the rules on them. And they get 100% of the price, which if you're a publisher, it's remarkable how much money they lose. Something like eBay only takes 10% when you're selling a physical good. You sell a digital good, you're frequently losing 30, 40, 50%, which is somewhat surprising, but that's what the cost. YouTube takes 45, Apple takes 30. If you're on a cable network, you're losing over 50% of the cost of that show to the cable network. And so this will also, we think, result in reduced costs for consumers, as well as more freedom for consumers.
So how do you address piracy?
So there's a couple of different answers to this. The first answer is that we address it the same way that we do more than this, but my sort of snarky answer is the same way that HTTP does. That is that LBRY is a protocol that facilitates routing to a stream of bits and then accessing it. And that at the protocol level, there is not a strong amount of control and the ability to do that. But we accept that with lots of other technologies. We accept that with HTTP and lots of other things. That said, there is a number of things that we do. One, at the application level, we will be providing filtering. So in terms of the browsers and all of the software that we release, all the official software, will respect blacklists, and we will be publishing lists of infringing content in accordance with the DMCA and the CDA. The other aspects of this are, there's several other things that we think that this reduces piracy versus BitTorrent. One, there is an ability for publishers to basically take over these shorter names. So if someone is trying to publish infringing content at Spider-Man, there's an ability for Spider-Man to be pointed to something that isn't Spider-Man because of this system. The penalties for profiting off of copyright infringement are significantly more than performing copyright infringement without profiting. copyright infringement without profit, like if someone just downloads something off BitTorrent on their home computer, the worst that they'll face is a fine. If you're profiting off the copyright infringement, you're looking at jail time. And LBRY does not go out of its way to encourage people to publish anonymously. That is, it's not a system that is, now it is on the internet, so if people, it's difficult to actually prevent things from being done anonymously on the internet, but it's not a system that's been designed to encourage that kind of thing.
Wait, you do though say improves incentives and
The privacy improvement is more in reference to the hosting of data. So the fact that we're doing these anonymous 2 megabyte chunks means that you can contribute your disk space and bandwidth and not have to be overly concerned about what you're hosting. But in terms of publishing of content, there's not really a privacy improvement there. And then the third one is that this one's more theoretical, but it's also, in my opinion, the strongest, which is that at scale, there will be a need for settlement layers and financial layers that will provide a point of blocking infringing content. So that is that people will, if you're making money off of infringing content, it will be difficult to get that money out of the system, and it would be difficult to purchase that content as well. To the point that content would likely be more expensive than the legitimate content. But that is a more theoretical argument.
Occasionally we get asked how can you be piracy resistant but also claim that you're resistant to censorship? And the answer to that is actually pretty simple. All you have to do is make the total cost to the consumer, time cost plus money cost, lower for piracy, but for censorship, for censored content, like say the latest WikiLeaks, people are going to be willing to pay $8 to get something that's been censored. So, whereas for pirate content, all it has to be is as cheap or cheaper than the legitimate version has to be as cheap or cheaper than the pirate version. It's a pricing thing.
So where we are as a company, we have this working beta application. We're currently doing a beta that's actually anyone with a GitHub account is allowed in. We had almost 1,000 people do that just this last week. So there's a great quick start guide, which I'll put up the link in just a second. But if you are a developer and you're interested in learning, so the LBRY basically provides a set of APIs to do this kind of stuff, to make an entry in the catalog, to fetch a piece of content. So if you're a programmer, you don't need to write you want to write an image hosting site, a video streaming site, a CAD file hosting site. All of that lifting has already been done for you, and you can just write the interface.
What's ICO? Sorry.
This is that's a blockchain. It's a blockchain jargon term. I probably should have removed that. It's initial coin offering. So we haven't sold any of our blockchain credits to the public. We've only been funded through a more traditional funding mechanism, which is VCs. We have 200,000 people on our list to participate in the beta, and we had 1,000 in the GitHub one just this last week. We have a commitment from a Hollywood studio, and we have a commitment from a pretty long list of YouTubers at this point, with the biggest, with several that have millions to maybe 5 million subscribers. And the total number of views on the YouTube committed content is in the hundreds of millions. So there are definitely a lot of YouTubers and streamers out there who are concerned about building their business on top of a company that has shown a willingness to change the rules on them really at any time. So this is the guide that I was talking about. This is pretty cool. If you're interested in actually using LBRY, it'll take you about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. It will show you the basics of the API. If you haven't used Bitcoin or cryptocurrency before, it will also let you learn a little bit about that. And you can also interact with us in a number of ways. All of our code is open source and MIT licensed, so it's all completely in the public and licensed as permissively as possible. We have a Slack. There's a couple thousand people in our Slack channel. It's an active group, and if you ever have a question, there will be someone there who can answer it for you. And you can also just I'm always available via email, and love hearing from people who are looking at our software. I think that's all that I have. I was planning, I knew that I had an hour, and I knew that wasn't going to be an hour. So I was thinking that if people were interested and people had computers, we could actually do some of the do the quick start if people were interested in doing it. I can also just take questions or show you guys more about the system in terms of like what people are interested in. Are there questions first? I guess let's do questions first if people have questions. Although they were mainly asked as we were going, it seemed like.
What
No
are
one?
channels?
No, it's about challenge.
People just assume that it has channels. I don't need to tell them that channels aren't actually done yet. All right, I'm gonna open
The quick start is a guide to use it. It's for developers that's using the API and things like that. It's not just going to be a demo on the product.
Yeah, I'm going to show this. I'm just going to go ahead and show this because I think it's interesting to see what's actually happening underneath the hood in a little bit more detail. That's interesting. You don't have the icons.
I told you, Safari is a little funky with LBRY website.
Yeah, that's like font awesome. Everyone uses that. I'm surprised. Do you have the daemon installed on here? Yeah?
I have my version of the daemon installed. Close enough.
I'll just download this one. I'll just run this one direct.
I just downloaded it already.
Okay.
You're already running it.
Oh, it's already open.
Yeah.
You
See,
guys have
now,
some really awesome headshots on
thank you. Man, now I'm on a Mac and I don't know how to do anything.
Got some help.
Yeah.
So do we want to bring up terminal or?
Yeah, let's bring up the terminal. What how many people are developers here? You guys all developers? What do you work in normally?
it. Lately Node.
Okay.
So Ruby in my background.
Yeah. So that application that I showed is just it's just a React app and it's built in Electron, which uses Node. How about you, Aaron?
Mostly Ruby on Rails right now.
Okay.
I work with React as well.
Okay. So this is the actual. That's probably not very legible, huh?
Blow it up. Do control
I'm-
command plus.
I'm doing plus. Yeah, just it ate everything. It's interesting. Ah, look at that, it's getting bigger. So can I just do dots? What do I have library.cli here?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't need the dot flash.
I don't. Look at you. It's in your path and everything. So this command. This is that's way too big. This is a command line utility that basically implements the API. So this is the list of, it's about 50 things that LBRY will provide for you. And so suppose, for example, that I wanted to, suppose I wanted to resolve a name. So let's say this is one of the films that was there. And I can do that. I can look that up and I can get back the metadata associated with that entry. And then if I wanted to actually access it, well, then again, I don't know if this is the most understandable. Watching me do this. Is that still readable? Even then, you still can't get it on the screen. But yeah, that's the status of the file. It returns a whole bunch of information about it. And then I'm probably not gonna do a whole one because it requires a decent amount of information. But then there's also a publish command. Let's see what happens. It probably just errors if I don't give it any information. Yeah.
Oh, no, it doesn't need all those.
Is it function?
Command, I think.
So there's a publish command that would let you make an entry. So I mean, already that's really cool, right? That you can use this just to write data in a way that is, I never want to use the word permanent when it comes to computers, but it's much more robust than any other way of writing that data because it's actually getting written to a blockchain that it ends up getting written to thousands of computers and there's economic incentive to continue to be hosting it and perpetuating it. So you could, if you wanted to use this to again, to write any kind of, it generally works better for content that other people are going to want to access. Like, it probably wouldn't work very well to use it as like an alternative to Dropbox or backing up your stuff. You could try. I wouldn't recommend it, but for stuff that you want other people to consume or access, this was not possible to do anything like this until until the invention of Bitcoin, and it's taken a significant amount of time for people to even realize that you could use that technology to do things beyond just maintaining account balances. But there's no, there are maybe there's a small handful of companies that are trying to do something similar to this, and none of them were as far or farther along than any of them really.
Many of them are also approaching the I want to store my family photos. I don't want to do a YouTube channel. I want to store these things that nobody else is going to have, and I want that to be fruitful.
Yeah.
So they're doing a different problem.
Is this causing any questions? I'm just trying to get you guys to ask more questions. And if this is all making perfect sense to you and you've only heard about it for less than 30 minutes, either I've gotten better at my job or this is a particularly smart group, because I know from doing this, like it's difficult to wrap your head around all this stuff.
I can confirm that this is a really smart group. I know half the people in this room.
Also, I mean, if for people, I'm also happy to just generally talk blockchain. If that's a technology that people are not deeply familiar with, I can talk a little bit about what that actually is and how it works.
So I know that one of the like inventors of Bitcoin is in the area was UMass professor. Have I got that right?
It's talking about
You talking about Gavin Andreessen?
Probably.
Was he a UMass professor? He lives in Amherst, I believe.
Yeah.
But it would make sense if he was a professor. He's certainly
He lives in Amherst.
yeah, he's certainly smart enough. Yeah, so
So it's not he's not related to you.
no, I've been on a panel with him before, talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
And it's kind of interesting that you have this Amherst presence, but
Yeah,
I wonder if there was
more coincidental.
Okay.
I live in southern New Hampshire myself, but these guys live around here, and they said come to Nerd, and I said okay. I'm easy to convince. So yeah, all right, sure. I'll talk about blockchain a little bit in general. Is this like who here knows a little bit? Who knows a little bit? Anyone who knows a little bit about blockchain? Anyone here said that? Did anyone here, aside from the people who work for LBRY, said they know a lot about blockchain? Okay. So let's see. I'm trying to think what level I should start at. Basically, the simplest way to start getting your head around the best way to start. A blockchain works basically by having a bunch of people in parallel competing to solve mathematical puzzles, particularly the types of puzzles that are NP difficult to try and answer, but very quick to verify that that answer was correct.
Trapdoors.
Yeah, and so by doing this and having people to race to do it in parallel, and granting the person who first solves one of these puzzles a reward, you can have any data state be pretty robust, and you can prevent entries into that data that are mutually incompatible. So you can get an experience that's a lot like a centralized database, where I know that basically equivalent to the same, ACID, the same functionality you get from a standard database, but you can do that without needing to say that this one node or this one computer or this one piece of software is in charge. I'm probably not making enough
What's the
sense.
double spend problem?
Yeah, so blockchain solved the double spend problem. So in previous attempts to create decentralized or peer-to-peer cash-like solutions, the problem that people had not been able to get over was how do you solve the double spend problem, which is if you've got all these nodes who are doing things decentralized manner, what happens if I just very quickly go to Jack and try to spend $5 and go to Alex and try to spend $5?
The same $5.
The same $5, right? So I've got some electronic entry that says that I have $5. I'm going to try to very quickly and simultaneously buy two things with it at once.
Before the check clears either one.
Right. And so it took this problem, let's see, it was the late 90s, I think, when people first started wanting to build decentralized electronic cash. And it wasn't really until Bitcoin that, at least some people argue that people had the idea before it, but it certainly wasn't until Bitcoin that anything actually worked using it. And so Bitcoin really would have been, what, 2010 or 11? I guess we're going on 8 years.
It's like 2009.
Yeah, 8 years. But I feel like it only really started making it out of very niche communities.
2011.
Yeah, or later. And so the solution to the double spend problem is to have these miners racing to solve mathematical puzzles. As part of solving the puzzle, they're basically seeking for a hash that meets a set of constraints. And as part of calculating that hash, they're including the transactions that they've been observing. And then when they announce the solution to that puzzle, that transaction is in the block. That's why it's called a blockchain. So so basically I've got a node. Well, let's see, let's not tell nodes as blocks. I've got some initial state. Let's say that my initial state is that I'm just going to call it account A, and it has 10,000. And a blockchain is basically this chain of append-only blocks that announce changes to the state.
It's a transactional database.
So maybe I announce move 500 from A to B. A node observes this. It updates its internal state. Okay, and then if it solves this puzzle, this challenge, it's going to announce this new block to the network, and then so on. It will continue, and it solves the double spend problem because it can't get into two blocks at once. It could temporarily, and that's why you have block. That's why you have a number. That's why it's the longest chain. Yes. And so yeah, so
it doesn't happen for more than 5 blocks. It's statistically not going to happen. That you have that blocks keep being discovered at the same time in lockstep, one after the other. Eventually, one of the chains is going to grow faster than the other, right? And once that happens, you say the long chain wins.
Yeah, and so this is in Bitcoin. This happens every 10 minutes. So you have this new set. You have a new block that's the new changes, and about approximately every 10 minutes, a new block gets confirmed, and that becomes the new state of the database. And so considering that, yes, because it is conceivable that the network can briefly fork, it's recommended that you wait at least 6 blocks for to really count a transaction as confirmed. I think 6 blocks is probably. It's possibly overkill, but if you really want to be safe, you can wait even longer. Most applications that use Bitcoin will do it after 0 or 1 blocks. They'll at least
depends what they are.
Depends on what they are. You can also Bitcoin, like the first implementation of many technologies, turns out that you can do some of these things better. A lot of blockchains have confirmation times that are much shorter now. The LBRY blockchain confirmation time is 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes, and probably could potentially be even shorter. Definitely not the best blockchain 101 introduction that has been given.
I got a thing for you, actually.
Yeah. Let's get.
So if I go to Amazon, right,
Yeah,
they confirm my payment immediately.
Yeah.
And ship stuff. Or if I'm a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
They confirm my payment immediately. Or if I'm in a store buying a dress.
Yeah, no, hey, I agree. I am not. There's some people out there who are into blockchain who think like blockchain is this magical thing that's going to solve all of the world's problems. I'm not one of those people by any means. I don't even really think that Bitcoin will. Certainly not it's going to require good second level solutions, which basically means you're re-implementing traditional payment networks to get anything like a good end consumer experience, right? The reason that I think blockchain is important is it allows all kinds of it allows us to send the equivalent of cash electronically, which was never possible before, right? So as a consumer going into Target, I don't try to use Bitcoin. I don't expect to use Bitcoin, but if I want to send cash electronically, and I don't want to be subject to, I mean, really all the services. I mean, I can talk about experiences I've had on PayPal where I've had hundreds of dollars reversed from me. There's no equivalent solution, and it extends so you can think of Bitcoin as being like decentralized cash. We can extend that and say that you can generally use blockchain to create decentralized databases and create, right? This is right. Accounts are just the database use case.
So suppose you have 1,000 transactions going on within a 10-minute period. Are there 1,000 different puzzles?
If you've heard of the block size debate in Bitcoin, that's like what this is dealing with, is how many transactions can be grouped into one block, and there is an upper bound, and when that bound is reached, you're paying a fee, and the people who are putting those transactions together in the block are deciding which ones they're going to exclude until the next one. Right?
But there's only one puzzle per block. You can think of it as a puzzle that's the equivalent of saying, like, I want to, let's say I have,
You got a room full of people with dice. Okay?
let's say I have some hash function, and X is the state of all I have this local state as I'm observing transactions, and I'm updating my own local copy. I have some hash function that's a hash of that data state, and then I'm looking to find, I don't know if this is precisely correct, so maybe
Finding a hash that's below a target value.
well, I'm essentially performing an operation on the hash that is going to find a,
No,
right.
You're taking the block plus random
Exactly.
value X.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Hashing it and
Yeah.
saying, is the hash less than my target value? If it is, then it's valid. If it isn't, try again with another random value. And so that's why I was making the analogy. You've got a bunch of people rolling dice, and if you get a 19 or higher, you win. The first person to get a 19 or higher wins. But if people are getting a 19 too often, then that number gets bumped up to a 20, right? And it adjusts depending on how many people are rolling dice, how frequently, so that
It's like
you're
block
hitting
size
a
might be
win.
adjusted.
Well, no, so the
Or-
target, that number that you're having to go below, that target number moves up and down depending on how often the problem is being solved.
How many people are rolling dice?
So if it's being solved too fast, then you make the number higher.
That 10-minute
Right.
is a choice.
10
It's not
minute is
the number.
the 10 minute is like the center of this curve that you're adjusting around.
well, it's 11:53, so I'm,
So what's the incentive then of
why do this? Why mine?
no, you've got all these people rolling dice, right?
Yeah.
What's the incentive for them to be rolling the dice?
They
Great.
want to be the first one to get the winning roll,
Great.
because once they get it, everyone else can see that they got it and nobody can deny it. So, and for getting it, they get a reward.
Yeah.
Um,
So every time,
Not
yeah.
Bitcoin.
that's what mining is you're generating these rewards.
So this is for
So you get a
mining, but how does
You get
Bitcoins
You're
are created
rolling.
by paying people for validating other transactions.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where the new coins are coming
That
from.
actually
Is
makes a lot of sense.
when you solve this problem, new credits are created and they're given to the person who solved the problem. So
I
So
thought
if your
that over time
library,
it got-
getting back to your library, if it's based on Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin transactions going on to encourage people to store your content in other places. And that means you have to put some of your own Bitcoin into it to initiate that, basically.
It doesn't. So it doesn't. In the case of library specifically, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. We're basically open to any number of
we have our own blockchain. The
crypto.
library's its own blockchain. So
Okay.
Um,
You could exchange dollars for your
yes. Yeah.
currency.
And we're on a couple of the major exchanges where you can do that.
Okay, so then the question actually becomes, what if you just want to distribute your stuff for free?
So you can.
And
So
don't want
the
to have to pay to make that happen.
You can basically do that. There is essentially a minimum price to make an entry in the catalog. Right now, that minimum price though would be the equivalent of like fractions of a cent. But it is technically non-zero.
As a fee to the claim.
Yeah. So that part would never be zero. However, it's zero for other people to discover it. And as long as you or other people are willing to host it for free, it's also zero to access it. So that's basically the BitTorrent case. So if you can say that this content is free, a lot of people will run their nodes for free. Like the data costs that you're paying typically right now on the system are zero.
That's the default setting.
Yeah, but that is not, it can't be strongly guaranteed. But I think that it's very likely in reality that you could do it. But it can't be known that it will be zero. Which is somewhat disappointing, but unfortunately, there's no way to force people to make it free.
But you do earn credit just for leaving your computer on it. So
Yeah.
Right, but if someone is charging for it, people will frequently discover the other nodes that aren't.
Yes.
You will try to get it from the cheapest node that will give it to you.
Yeah. I mean, we think that's a very powerful aspect of the system, that you're basically part of what we're trying to do is turn data into a commodity. Like in the sense that it's kind of crazy that we spend a lot of time building very complicated systems, like acting like you're not ultimately distributing a number at the end of the day, which is very easy to like replicate reliably. And we want to pretend like we can actually keep these secret. You can't. And you're better off by designing a system that has these kinds of properties. We think you can ultimately distribute data a lot